When I found out what my sister had done, it felt like the earth beneath my feet had shifted, leaving me standing on a precipice, staring into a void I couldn't understand. I had always known her to be impulsive, reckless even, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. I still remember the exact moment everything broke open. It was late afternoon, and I had just gotten back from a long day at work, still carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. IVF, the months of saving, the careful planning, the sacrifices. I had told myself it would all be worth it when I finally got the opportunity to start my family. After years of trying, struggling, and watching the world around me grow while I stood still, I had finally saved enough for IVF. This was it. The dream I had held close to my heart for so long was within reach. It was supposed to be a moment of triumph, of relief. But when I walked into my living room and saw my sister sitting there, her face flushed, her eyes darting around the room like she was hiding something, I knew something was off. "Hey, what's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I set down my bag. She hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice low. There was a tension in the air I couldn't ignore. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart already beginning to race. "You're scaring me." She bit her lip, glancing down at her hands before looking up at me, her eyes full of guilt. "I did something," she said, voice trembling slightly. "Something I should have told you about sooner." My stomach churned, but I was too exhausted to process what was happening. "What is it?" She stopped herself, taking a shaky breath. "I used your IVF savings." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. My first instinct was disbelief. "What do you mean you used them? Those weren't yours, Emily. They were for my IVF, my chance at having a baby." Her eyes welled with tears as she nodded. I know, but I was in debt. And when I was planning my wedding, I needed the money. She trailed off, unable to meet my gaze. "You took my money?" I said, my voice rising. "You took my future and used it for your wedding." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, my heart pounding against my ribcage as the betrayal sank in deeper. She nodded, her hands twisting together in her lap. "I didn't know how to ask you. I didn't think you'd understand. I thought maybe if I just borrowed it, I could pay you back before you even noticed. I swear, I never meant for you to find out this way." My mind reeled, my blood boiled. The years of hard work, of saving every penny, of holding on to the hope that one day I'd be able to start a family. It had all been stripped away in one careless decision. Emily, my sister, the person I trusted most, had taken something irreplaceable from me. But what I said next took the air right out of my lungs. "I just don't think you deserve to be a mother anyway." She spat, her words sharp and cruel. "Not after everything that's happened. You're too focused on what you want, too selfish to be a mom. You never think about anyone else but yourself." The words struck me like a slap. I froze, not sure if I had heard her correctly. "What did you just say?" She looked at me, her face hardening with frustration, her lips curled into a sneer. "You heard me. You've been obsessed with having a baby for so long, but you're not ready for it. You've never been ready. You only care about your own needs, your own desires. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe it's better that you never get the chance." I stood there, unable to move. The betrayal, the sting of her words, It felt like the floor had been ripped out from beneath me, and all I could do was stand there, gasping for air. She didn't get it. She didn't understand how hard I had fought for this, how much of myself I had poured into saving for the chance to become a mother. It wasn't just money. It was hope. It was the belief that one day I could give a child the love I had never received. But Emily had turned it all into something to take, something to use for herself. "Is this really how you feel?" I asked, my voice shaking with the hurt I couldn't contain. "You honestly think I don't deserve to be a mother? After everything I've been through? After all the times I've helped you, supported you?" Her face softened slightly, but there was no remorse, only bitterness. "I'm sorry," she muttered, barely above a whisper. I don't know how to fix this. I was desperate. I thought this would be the only way out." I felt my body tremble with anger and frustration, but the pain was deeper. I could feel the weight of her words crashing over me, each one sinking deeper into my chest. "You stole from me, Emily. You took away my chance at being a mother, and then you have the audacity to tell me I don't deserve it." She didn't answer, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with the weight of her betrayal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out, to make her feel the hurt she had caused. But in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't going to let her words define me. I wasn't going to let her destroy the dream I had worked for so long to achieve. "I can't believe you did this," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "But I'll make sure I don't let this stop me. You can't take my dreams away, Emily. I will find another way. I'll fight for it, no matter what." I turned away from her, my hands shaking as I gripped the edge of the couch. I wanted to leave, to walk away from this nightmare, but I knew I had to face it. I had to face her. "I'm done with this," I said quietly, not turning back. "You've hurt me enough. I'm done." I didn't leave immediately, but I knew I needed space. There was a part of me that wanted to scream at her, demand that she see the damage she had caused. But in the stillness of the moment, I realized that no amount of shouting would change what had already happened. What I had just learned would stick with me like a wound, raw and unhealable for now. I walked out of the room, feeling the weight of every step. My chest was tight with anger and betrayal, but there was a deeper feeling I couldn't ignore, the crushing sense of loss. That was what really hurt. The dream I had been nurturing for so long was slipping away, and I didn't know how to get it back. The money was gone. The funds I had carefully saved for IVF, my last chance to have the family I so desperately wanted, gone, just like that. I could hear Emily's footsteps behind me, but I didn't turn around. She called my name softly, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not right now. I went into my bedroom and slammed the door shut. I needed to be alone. I sat on the bed, hands gripping the edge of the mattress, my breath shaky, my thoughts spinning. I could still hear her voice echoing in my mind, her words cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. "You don't deserve to be a mother." Those words, they replayed over and over in my head like a broken record, each repetition digging further into my heart. I had spent years trying to be everything for everyone else, but when it came to my own dreams, my own desire to become a mother, to feel the joy and the heartbreak that came with that, she had taken that from me too. I tried to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. Slowly, at first, and then in a steady stream that I couldn't stop. I cried for what was lost, for the years I had spent hoping for a miracle, for the chance to experience the kind of love I had always dreamed of giving. I cried for the betrayal, for the feeling that the one person I had always trusted, my own sister, had shattered that trust in a way that would never be fully healed. After some time, the tears slowed, and I sat there, exhausted. My heart ached in a way I hadn't known was possible, but I was no stranger to pain. I had lived with it for years, quietly, in the background of my life. But this felt different. It felt like something had been ripped out of me, something I could never get back. And then, in the silence of my room, something else occurred to me. I wasn't just angry with Emily. I was angry with myself. Angry that I had let myself get so caught up in this idea that my worth was tied to motherhood, that I had believed that becoming a mother was the only way I could be complete. For the first time, I began to ask myself some hard questions. Had I truly been so consumed by this one dream that I had lost sight of everything else? Had I been so focused on the idea of having a child that I had forgotten what it meant to love and care for myself first? I wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. I couldn't keep going down this path of self-doubt and anger. Emily had taken something from me, yes, but I wasn't going to let her take my peace of mind too. I stood up, wiped my face, and took a deep breath. This was the moment I needed to decide. I could sit here and wallow in the anger and the hurt, or I could choose to find a way forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever was. I looked at the clock and realized how late it had gotten. I hadn't spoken to Emily since the argument, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to. But I knew that if I didn't, I'd never find peace. She was my sister, after all, and no matter how hurt I was, I had to face her. I walked out into the living room. She was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped in her lap, her face pale. She looked up when I walked in, but neither of us spoke for a moment. The tension between us was thick, suffocating, but I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to be angry with her forever. I need you to understand something, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was still racing. What you did hurt me. It hurt me in ways I can't even explain. But I'm not going to let this define me. I won't let it destroy me. She didn't say anything at first. I think she was waiting for me to lash out, to say something that would make her feel even more guilty. But I couldn't. I was done with that. I'm still trying to figure out what to do next, I continued, taking a seat across from her. I don't know what my future looks like right now. I don't know if IVF is still an option for me or if I should just let go of that dream. But I do know that I can't keep being consumed by the anger. I can't keep holding on to it. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, her face full of regret. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know that, right? I know you didn't, I said quietly, but it doesn't change what happened. And right now, I need to focus on healing. I need to find my way back to a place where I can breathe again. And that doesn't include holding on to this. She nodded, her face red with emotion. I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I stared at her for a long time. I knew she was genuinely sorry, but I also knew that forgiveness was something I wasn't ready to give just yet. But I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to breathe again. I'm not ready to forgive you right now, I said softly, but I'll get there. And when I do, I'll let you know. But until then, I need space. I need to figure out what comes next for me." She nodded, tears falling freely down her cheeks now. "I understand. I'm so sorry, and I'll be here when you're ready." I left her there, feeling the weight of everything hanging in the balance. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Emily's mistakes define my future. I had lost something precious, yes, but I was still here, and somehow I was going to find my way forward. The following days were a blur of mixed emotions. I spent my time lost in a fog of uncertainty. Every time I looked at my bank account, the numbers seemed to mock me, reminding me of the dream I'd worked so hard for. Gone. Each time I passed a store window and saw a mother cradling her baby, I felt that sharp pang in my chest, that ache that no amount of self-talk or reassurance could erase. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Amid the storm of emotions, I began to feel something stirring inside me, a realization that I had spent too much time letting the actions of others, especially Emily's, dictate how I felt about myself. I had let her betrayal sink in so deeply that it threatened to drown me. But somewhere in the quiet moments, I began to understand that I didn't have to let it. I took long walks in the evenings just to clear my head. The air was crisp, and with each step, I focused on my breathing. I let the rhythm of my footsteps calm the whirlwind in my mind. I had lived so long in the shadow of my own expectations, in the shadow of this one dream that I'd neglected to see the other parts of me that still mattered, parts that still had value, even if motherhood wasn't immediately in the cards. One evening, as I walked through the park near my home, I saw a group of mothers with their children. They were sitting on the grass, laughing, sharing stories. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I stopped, just for a moment, watching them. The pain of not being part of that group gnawed at me. But something in me shifted. I didn't need to feel angry anymore. I didn't need to lash out or wallow in bitterness. What I needed was to find peace with where I was right now. I pulled out my phone and texted Emily. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before I typed, "We need to talk. Not now, but soon. I need to figure some things out. I'll reach out when I'm ready." I didn't know what I was hoping to achieve by sending that message. Maybe it was an attempt at closure, or maybe it was just my way of taking control of the situation again. Either way, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this define me any longer. I spent the next few days focusing on myself. I set up a meeting with a counselor, someone who specialized in grief and emotional healing, and I began researching different options for building a family without IVF, adoption, fostering, other avenues I had never considered before. The idea of motherhood was still alive in my heart, but now it felt more like a journey than a destination, and that felt okay. For the first time in weeks, it felt okay to not have all the answers. Emily didn't reach out, and I didn't push her to. We both needed time. The next few days passed slowly, but I started to feel something change. I felt like I was reclaiming pieces of myself that had been lost in the years of trying to control the outcome of my life, to shape it according to one dream. I still wanted to be a mother, more than anything, but I was learning to let go of the idea that it had to happen in the way I had planned. Life wasn't going to unfold the way I thought it would, and maybe that was okay. The real turning point came one Sunday afternoon when I decided to take a trip to the local farmers market. It was a small, cozy event filled with stalls of fresh produce, handmade crafts, and flowers. I walked through the market, my hands in my pockets, breathing in the fresh air, letting myself feel the sunlight warm my skin. As I passed a flower stand, I spotted a woman I vaguely recognized, one of the mothers from the park. She was there with her young daughter, picking out flowers, laughing with her child in a way that made me ache. But instead of walking past, I stopped. "Hey," I called out, my voice a little shaky. The woman looked up, her eyes brightening when she recognized me. "Oh, hey, how are you doing?" she asked, her smile warm and genuine. "I'm okay," I replied, a little surprised by the honesty in my voice. "Just, figuring things out." I motioned to the flowers. "These are beautiful." "They are, aren't they?" She smiled, holding up a bouquet of vibrant sunflowers. "I'm getting these for my mom. She loves sunflowers." "I bet she'll love them," I said, nodding. I took a deep breath. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said, clearly not expecting what I was about to ask. "I've been trying to have a child for a while now," I started, my voice quieter than I intended. "And I'm not sure where to go from here. I've tried IVF, but things didn't work out. And I guess I'm wondering if you ever felt lost, like you didn't know what your next step was going to be." She paused for a moment, her expression softening as she listened. "I understand what you mean," she said after a beat. "I struggled with infertility for years, and I felt like I had to do everything to make motherhood happen. But after some time, I realized I had to let go of trying to control it. It was painful, but it also opened me up to a different kind of peace, a peace that comes with the knowing that sometimes things unfold in ways you never expected, and that's okay. It doesn't make you any less of a mother." Her words hit me like a wave, and for the first time, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I hadn't been able to put it into words before, but hearing her speak so freely gave me permission to let go of the guilt, the shame, the need to do it all a certain way. It was okay to not have all the answers. It was okay to be uncertain about the future. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I really needed to hear that. She smiled kindly, squeezing my arm. "You're welcome. I know it's hard, but whatever path you take, I know you'll be a great mom. You already have a big heart." I walked away from the market that day with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't a sudden epiphany or a dramatic shift in perspective, but it was enough. I knew that motherhood wasn't just about biological children. It was about love, about care, about nurturing life in whatever form it came. When I got home that afternoon, I looked at the message I had sent Emily. "We need to talk." I realized that I didn't need to talk to her now. I didn't need to hold on to the anger. What I needed was to focus on me, on what I wanted and what I needed to heal. The path to motherhood was still ahead of me, and while I didn't know what it looked like yet, I had a newfound peace in knowing I didn't have to walk it alone. The weeks that followed were a quiet kind of healing. Emily and I had not spoken much since that explosive confrontation. I hadn't reached out to her, and she hadn't reached out to me. There was still a distance between us, but something had shifted. I knew we couldn't keep avoiding each other forever, but in this space, this unexpected silence, I found a place for my own thoughts to breathe. for my own heart to heal without the constant reminder of betrayal. But as much as I tried to focus on moving forward, I couldn't escape the fact that something had broken, something deep and unspoken. I couldn't just let it go without addressing it, without letting Emily know how I truly felt, how much she had hurt me, and how much I needed to rebuild the trust between us. I didn't know if she was ready to hear me, but I knew I couldn't keep carrying the weight of our broken relationship on my own. One Saturday morning, I found myself standing in front of her door, unsure whether I was ready for what came next. The weight of what I was about to say, what I was about to ask, pressed down on me like a heavy stone in my chest. I took a deep breath, knocked, and waited. It felt like an eternity before she opened the door. Her face softened when she saw me, but there was still an underlying wariness in her eyes. I could tell she wasn't sure how to react, whether to pull me in for a hug or shut the door in my face. "Hey," I said, offering a tentative smile. "Can we talk?" She looked at me for a long moment, then stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in." We sat on the couch in her living room, and for the first time, there was a silence between us that wasn't filled with anger or resentment, just uncertainty. I could see the cracks in her composure. She hadn't been okay either. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," I started, my voice steady but soft, "about me not deserving to be a mother. And I realized something that I don't think I ever told you." She shifted uncomfortably, but I could see her trying to stay present, trying to listen. That was something. I didn't get to this point in my life by pretending everything was fine. I continued, pausing to gather my thoughts. I've spent so many years dreaming about motherhood, about building a family, but I've also been through heartbreak. I've been through loss. I've struggled with things I didn't even know how to talk about. And all of that has shaped who I am today. And the truth is, yes, I do want to be a mother, more than anything. But I've realized that my worth isn't tied to that dream, and it never should have been. Emily stayed quiet, her eyes flickering between me and her hands folded in her lap. I could feel her heart wrestling with my words. She was trying to understand, trying to hold herself accountable, but her guilt, her own regrets, had built up walls between us, walls she wasn't sure how to tear down. "I'm not angry at you anymore," I said, my voice a little more assured. I've been furious, hurt, devastated, but I realized something. You didn't just steal my savings, Emily. You stole a dream. And yes, that hurt like hell, but I can't keep living in that pain. Not for my sake, and certainly not for yours. Her breath caught. "I never wanted to steal your dream," she whispered. I don't even know what I was thinking. I didn't know how to ask for help. I thought that if I just took the money and... "I get it," I interrupted gently. "I get that you were desperate. You were in over your head, and you saw a way out. But you should have asked me. You should have trusted me enough to let me help you, because we're family. But I can't change what happened, and neither can you." She wiped a tear from her eye, looking away for a moment, as if trying to regain control. "I've been such an idiot. I ruined everything. I should have been the one to support you, to help you achieve your dream, not make it harder. I didn't know how to fix it, but I wanted to fix it. I don't know if we can ever fix it completely," I said, the words feeling heavier than I intended. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to work through this, if you are." Emily didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, I thought she might say something that would shut me down, that would tell me we couldn't move forward. But then she reached across the table and took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I want to," she said quietly. "I want to make it right, even if I can't fix everything." There was a vulnerability in her voice that broke something inside me, something I hadn't realized had been locked away all this time. It wasn't forgiveness that I was offering, not yet, but it was the first step, the first honest step toward healing. "I don't know what the future holds, Emily," I said, feeling the weight of what I was about to admit. "But I can't let this define us. We've hurt each other, yes, but we're still sisters, and we still have a chance to rebuild what we've lost." She nodded slowly, her face wet with tears. "I want that too. I want to fix it, even if it's just one step at a time." The air between us had shifted in that moment. It wasn't an instant resolution, and it wasn't a promise that things would go back to how they were, but it was a promise that we would move forward together, slowly maybe, but we would move. As I stood up to leave, I felt the weight of everything that had transpired between us. The anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak. It was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. There was space now, room for hope, room for new beginnings. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Forgiveness wasn't something I could just give on a whim. But I also knew that healing wasn't just about one person making amends. It was about both of us. And right now, we were both ready to take the first step toward that healing. I walked out of her house with a new resolve. The road ahead would be difficult, but it would also be ours to walk. And that, I realized, was enough for now. The next few days were heavy with the weight of what had happened, but in a way that felt like a storm had passed. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy. There were still moments where the silence between Emily and me felt suffocating, like we were both holding our breath, waiting for something to break. But the truth was, something had already shifted. The walls between us hadn't come down completely, but they had cracked just enough to let a little light in. I found myself grappling with this new understanding of forgiveness. I hadn't expected it to come easily, but I didn't expect it to be so hard. The desire to be angry, to stay hurt, was strong, and every time Emily would make a mistake or say something that reminded me of the betrayal, the urge to pull back, to push her away, would rise in my chest. But then I'd remember our conversation and the words she had said and how she had reached out to me, vulnerable and remorseful. How could I deny that? How could I deny her the same chance I had been given to grow, to heal? I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing what had been done to me. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending the hurt didn't matter. It was about deciding that I wasn't going to let the hurt define me, define my future. It was about choosing to heal, choosing to take back the power I had handed over in my anger. One evening, a week or so after our talk, Emily invited me to dinner at her place. It was something small, just the two of us, a simple meal. She had been reaching out more, and while I was still cautious, I appreciated the effort. I had no expectations, but I was starting to realize that this was the road to healing. Small, steady steps. I arrived at her apartment, my heart fluttering with the anticipation of what we might talk about. I still wasn't sure if we could ever go back to the way things were, but I was learning to accept that maybe we didn't need to. Maybe what we had now was something better, something real. She answered the door with a hesitant smile, her eyes red from what I assumed had been another day of holding back tears. She had been doing that a lot lately, wearing her heart on her sleeve, vulnerable in ways I hadn't seen before. "Hey, I made your favorite," she said, stepping aside so I could enter. "I figured we could use a little comfort food." The familiar smell of lasagna filled the apartment, and I couldn't help but smile. It felt like we were starting to pick up the pieces of the bond we'd lost, one small gesture at a time. We sat at her dining table, the quiet clink of silverware the only sound between us as we ate. There was something almost normal about it, almost comforting. I caught myself laughing at a joke she made, and for the first time in a long time, it felt real, not forced. After dinner, we cleaned up together, working in silence, but with a shared sense of effort, of mutual respect. It was odd, this dance of two people trying to figure out what came next. I was still unsure of where we stood, of what the future held for us, but for the first time, I felt something like hope flicker inside me. "Can we talk?" Emily asked softly as we finished washing the dishes. She seemed nervous, and I wondered if she had something more to say, something that would open up the cracks we had so carefully started to fill. "Of course," I replied, turning to face her. I could feel my heart beating a little faster, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. She hesitated, wringing her hands in front of her. "I've been thinking about everything you said, about how I hurt you, and I wanted to apologize again. I know I can't undo it, but I just want you to know how sorry I am." Her words were sincere, but it was more than that. There was something about the way she said it, about the way her eyes met mine, filled with vulnerability, that made my chest tighten. This wasn't just about an apology. It was about her acknowledging what had happened between us. And for the first time, I realized that it wasn't the apology I had been waiting for all along. What I needed, what we both needed, was to find a way forward, to choose each other again, despite the hurt. "I hear you, Emily," I said, my voice steady but soft. "I know you're sorry, and I know this wasn't easy for you, but I need you to understand that I'm still hurt. I'm still processing. This isn't just about money. It's about trust. It's about what it took for me to get here, to even want to forgive." "I know," she whispered, nodding. "I can't ask you to just forgive me, and I'm not expecting that. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, and I'll keep trying." I let out a long breath, my heart racing as I searched for the right words. "I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forget what you did. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to trust you in the same way. But I want to try. I want to find a way to move forward for both of us. I don't want this to define our relationship anymore." She nodded again, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I understand, and I'll be here every step of the way. Even if you can't forgive me right now, I'm not going anywhere." The silence that followed was a moment of mutual understanding. We were still broken, but there was a quiet promise between us that we would try to put the pieces back together. Not perfectly, but as best as we could. "I'm scared," I said, suddenly, my voice catching in my throat. "I'm scared that I'll never get to be a mom. I'm scared that this dream I've had will always be out of reach, that I'll never be enough, that no matter how hard I try, it won't happen. Emily stepped forward, her hand gently touching my arm. You are enough. You know that, right? You've always been enough. I looked at her, the words sinking in, but something else rose in me, a quiet sense of resolve. I wasn't going to let my sister's betrayal dictate my future. I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all her, take my dreams away. I don't know what's next for me, Emily, I said, my voice quiet but resolute. But I'm going to keep moving forward. I'll find my way, with or without the IVF. I'm not giving up on being a mother, but I'm not going to let the fear of what I don't have stop me from living the life I do have. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. And I'll be right here, supporting you, no matter what. The air between us felt lighter, but it wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed, but it was real. And that, for now, was enough. In the weeks that followed that conversation with Emily, I noticed a shift within myself. It was slow, almost imperceptible at first, but it was there. There were moments when the anger would still flare up, when I would remember the betrayal, and the sting of it would make my chest tighten. But as time went on, those moments became less frequent. I wasn't sure if it was because I had finally accepted the reality of what had happened, or because I was slowly learning to let go of the pain, but something inside me was changing. I kept telling myself that healing wasn't a straight line. It wasn't about snapping my fingers and suddenly feeling okay again. It was messy, unpredictable. Some days I felt like I was moving forward, and others I felt like I was back at square one. But that was the nature of the journey. There was no perfect ending, no clean resolution. It was all about finding the courage to take one step at a time. Emily and I didn't talk about the IVF funds again, and I wasn't sure we ever would. It felt like an unspoken agreement between us. We would work towards something new. She had apologized, and I had acknowledged the hurt. But now it was about the future, about rebuilding the trust that had been shattered, not just between us, but within myself. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of the past, waiting for something or someone to give me permission to move forward. One evening, I found myself sitting alone in my living room, a cup of tea in hand, staring out the window at the fading sunlight. The quiet in the house was both peaceful and unsettling. I had always wanted a family. I'd spent so many years dreaming of that day when I could hold my child, nurture them, give them the love I had never had. It wasn't just about having a child. It was about building a legacy, a future, a family. But as I sat there, I realized something. Maybe the future I had imagined wasn't the only future available to me. I wasn't sure what had changed, but I suddenly felt a sense of clarity. It wasn't about giving up on my dreams. It was about realizing that the dream could take a different shape. I didn't need to let the hurt of Emily's betrayal define my path forward. I didn't need to hold on so tightly to one vision of what motherhood should look like. There were other ways, other paths to explore. I could still have a family, still find love, still become the mother I had always wanted to be, just maybe not in the way I had planned. That night, I went to bed feeling different. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic transformation. It was more of a quiet understanding, a realization that life could be just as fulfilling, just as meaningful, even if it didn't look the way I had always imagined. I woke up the next morning with a sense of purpose, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't sure exactly where to start, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I took a deep breath, stood up, and made myself a cup of coffee. It was a small thing, but it felt like a victory, choosing to face the day, choosing to take back control over my own life. As the weeks passed, I began to look into adoption agencies. It wasn't something I had considered before, but the more I read, the more I realized that there were so many ways to build a family. And maybe, just maybe, adoption was the path for me. It felt right. It didn't erase the desire I had to become a mother through IVF, but it gave me a new sense of hope. It wasn't about replacing one dream with another. It was about expanding my understanding of what it meant to be a mother. I reached out to a few agencies, made some inquiries, and started the process. It felt like I was taking control of my life again, something I hadn't done in so long. It was empowering, not just because I was exploring a new possibility, but because I was choosing to believe that I was worthy of becoming a mother, no matter how it happened. At the same time, Emily and I continued to navigate our complicated relationship. There were still moments when the old wounds would flare up, when the tension would return, but it wasn't all consuming anymore. We had begun to find a new rhythm. I wasn't sure what our future looked like, or whether things would ever go back to the way they had been, but I was starting to accept that it didn't have to. What mattered now was the way we chose to move forward and the love we had for each other, even through the pain. One evening, as I was finishing up some paperwork for the adoption agency, I received a text from Emily. It was simple, but it made me pause. "I'm proud of you." It was the first time she had said anything like that in a long while. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a mix of emotions. I hadn't expected her to acknowledge my efforts, not after everything that had happened, but there it was. A small gesture, a simple text, but it meant more to me than she could ever know. It was her way of saying she was sorry again, but more importantly, it was her way of showing that she was still here, still trying, just as I was. I took a deep breath and sent her a reply. "Thank you. I'm proud of you too. I think we're going to be okay." I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know what the future would hold. But in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need everything to be perfect. I didn't need to have all the answers. What mattered was that I was moving forward, step by step. And that was enough. The next day, I called the adoption agency and scheduled an appointment. I didn't know if it would lead to the family I had dreamed of, but I was ready to find out. Ready to take that first step into a future that was uncertain but full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders, not because everything was fixed or because the past had been erased, but because I had chosen to move forward. I had chosen to heal, and no one, not Emily, not anyone, could take that away from me. The days began to stretch out in a way that felt less like a waiting room and more like a new chapter opening. I had started the adoption process, but it wasn't just about filling out paperwork or attending meetings. It was about reclaiming a part of me that had been lost for so long. The pain from the betrayal, the loss of my savings, the dashed hopes. It was still there, of course, but now it didn't feel like the center of my world anymore. I was learning to take a step back and find joy in other parts of my life, even if they weren't what I had expected. I remember sitting on the couch one evening, flipping through a magazine, and I couldn't help but smile. I wasn't smiling because everything was perfect. It wasn't, but I was smiling because I had learned something simple, yet so profound. Happiness doesn't always come in the form you expect, and it doesn't need to be perfect to be real. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts, and I got up to answer it. When I opened it, there stood Emily. She looked nervous, her hand fidgeting with the strap of her purse. It had been a while since we'd seen each other outside of the occasional text or phone call, and in that moment, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Hey," she said softly, standing on the porch. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside to let her in, but my heart was already beating faster, uncertain of what was coming. Emily had been trying to be better, trying to fix what was broken. But there were still so many cracks, so many things unsaid. I had made peace with that, I thought. I had learned to focus on moving forward, not dragging the past behind me. We sat down in the living room, and for a moment there was a quiet tension between us. Neither of us spoke at first, but I could feel her wanting to say something. The weight of the past still hung in the air, but there was something else now, a sense of willingness to talk, to try. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "About moving forward, about the future." I nodded, letting her speak, even though the words hung heavy in the air. "I know it's not easy for either of us," I said, my voice steady, but not without emotion. "But I think we've both been trying, and that's enough for now." She looked at me, her eyes soft but earnest. "I know I've messed up, and I've said things I can't take back. But I want to try too. I want to be there for you, for whatever you need." I swallowed hard, feeling the sting of everything that had been said, of everything that had happened. "I don't know if I'll ever forget, Emily," I said, my voice a little shaky. "But I do know that I'm not going to let this stop me. Not anymore." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "I'm sorry. I know. Sorry doesn't fix everything, but I am sorry. I never should have done what I did." I wasn't sure what else to say, so I sat there, quietly absorbing her words. I had heard apologies before, but this felt different. There was a sincerity in her voice that I hadn't heard before. It wasn't the desperate apology of someone trying to fix everything right away. It was the apology of someone who finally understood the weight of what they had done, and that, in itself, meant something. "I'm not expecting perfection from you," I said, my voice steady. "I just want us to be real with each other. I need to know that you're really here, that you're not just trying to make things right because you feel guilty. I need to know that you've learned from this." Emily looked me in the eye, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something other than guilt in her expression. I saw honesty. "I've learned more than I can say," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I want to make it right. I don't know if I can ever earn your forgiveness, but I'll spend my life trying." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words sink in. It wasn't about erasing the past. It wasn't about pretending nothing had happened. It was about accepting that we had both made mistakes, that we had both hurt each other in ways that couldn't be undone. But it was also about accepting that we were both willing to try. "I don't need you to fix everything, Emily," I said quietly. "I just need to know you're here. I need to know that we're both willing to rebuild, even if it takes time." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm here, I promise." We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing everything that had been said. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation I had once imagined. It wasn't a perfect solution to all the pain, the anger, the betrayal, but it was enough. It was a start. Over the next few weeks, things between Emily and me slowly began to settle. We didn't talk every day, but we spoke more often, and each conversation felt more honest, more real than before. It was small steps, but they were steps. We were learning to rebuild what we had lost, even if it wasn't going to look the same as it once had. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something too. The adoption process was moving forward, and even though it was still in its early stages, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I was taking control of it. I was choosing to move forward, not with regret, but with hope. I wasn't sure when things had changed exactly. I wasn't sure when the anger had started to fade, when the sadness had started to feel less consuming. But one evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I realized something. I had survived the worst of it. I had survived the betrayal, the heartbreak, the feeling that I would never be enough. And I was still here. I had always believed that motherhood was the ultimate dream for me, but I was learning that it didn't have to come in a package I had imagined. I was still going to be a mother, one way or another. The road ahead wasn't clear, but that was okay. I wasn't looking for perfection anymore. I was just looking for peace, for acceptance, for the next step. And that was enough for now. As I sit here now, looking back at everything that's happened, I realize something. Life doesn't always unfold the way we plan. Sometimes we put all our hopes into one dream, only to see it slip through our fingers. Sometimes the people we love the most end up hurting us in ways we never imagined. But here's the truth I've learned along the way. What matters most isn't the hurt we experience or the dreams that don't come true. It's how we choose to move forward. Forgiveness isn't easy. Trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. But healing is a choice. It's a choice to pick yourself up, to look ahead, and to keep believing that there's a path forward, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know when or how I'll become a mother. But I do know this. I'm not going to let anyone or anything take my peace away. I'm not going to let the past define me. I'm moving forward, one step at a time, and that's all I can ask for. So, I want to ask you, my friends, have you ever been hurt by someone you loved? Have you ever had a dream slip through your fingers, only to realize that the real lesson was in how you chose to heal? How did you move forward? How did you find peace? I'd love to hear your stories, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you've ever found strength in the face of betrayal, I know it will help someone else. And if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about healing, forgiveness, and moving forward. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.